and welcome to our Flip video lesson, Writing and Ruling, lesson 4.15. Our lesson 4.15 details are Human Odyssey reading pages 137 to 139. Make sure it's important that you are reading those pages. There's additional information in there that we simply can't get in during our Flip video time and class time. Student Guide Workbook pages 138 and then 118 to 121. I'll explain that later. It looks like we're going backwards. OMS assignment assessment 4.15 and ancient Chinese culture, including religion and dynasties. And so what are we learning about today? Our Unit 4 lesson objectives are we're going to describe Chinese writing and its early relationship to religious ideas, describe key advances made under the Shang or Shang dynasty, explain the importance of ancestor worship to the Chinese, identify the first Chinese dynasty, and then recognize characteristics of ancient Chinese culture and ways in which historians and archaeologists have learned about the culture. Our lesson introduction, writing and ruling. The early Chinese were great city builders, but we know little about the origins of their civilization. In ancient China, powerful dynasties ruled, populous cities developed, and art and religion flourished. They believed nature was alive with spirits, and the dragon was an all-powerful godlike creature. They practiced ancestor worship and believed in an afterlife. Unlike early cultures, however, this one did not fade away. Even today, people in China still practice some of the old traditions, and Chinese silk is still prized around the world. I'm sorry, there's a typo there. It says the practice, and it should say they. So we're going to do a little bit extra from Duxter's today. There are 2 reading pages, but I just didn't feel that was enough to get all the information in that I needed. And then there's not a lot in our student guide today other than doing some comparison things. So I added in a Duxter's website, and you can fill in your student guide chart on page 118 to 121, the one that you used for ancient Sumer and ancient Mesopotamia, or you can wait and I'll have the chart posted later in the video. So what is a dynasty? A dynasty is one when a family rules a country or region over a long period of time. Generally, the head of the family will be the ruler of the land, like an emperor or king. When the ruler dies, another member of the family will take power, usually the oldest son. When a new family takes control, then a new dynasty begins. And if you take a look over here on the right, the dynastic cycle, it starts with the dynasty is founded by a powerful leader, and then there's this period of great prosperity, great power, restores peace, restores glory to the country, does a lot of public works. And then that kind of grace period kind of declines. There's a period of decline, higher taxes come in, maybe some power control comes in, some natural disasters maybe happen out of their control. The leader loses the mandate of heaven. This mandate of heaven, we'll talk about that on the next slide, is basically this idea that the ruler has basically not all godlike powers, but power from God to be able to rule. And so then there's this rebellion, the dynasty gets overthrown, and then this new leader gains mandate of heaven. And so then a new leader or a new ruling family comes in. So the dynastic cycle basically has to do with a family that rules, and then when that family loses power, then a new family comes in. Mandate of heaven. The mandate of heaven is what the Chinese people believe gave their rulers the right to be king or emperor. It means that the gods had blessed that person with the right to rule. A ruler had to be a good and just ruler to keep the mandate of heaven. When a ruler of a dynasty lost power, this meant that they must also have lost the mandate of heaven. And again, this is from the Duxter's website. And then this picture over here is the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huangdi. Major dynasties. So we've got the Zhou dynasty, the first dynasty in China. Very little is known. The Shang dynasty, which is what we're going to learn a lot about today. The Shang ruled much of the area along the Yellow River. Their last capital city was the great city of Yin. Yao was the longest ruling dynasty in the history of China. It first used the mandate of heaven to justify their rule, and much of the land was ruled by feudal lords who were relatives. Qin was the beginning of the Chinese, sorry, I need to move my camera over here. The beginning of the Chinese emperor. Qin Huangdi became the first Chinese emperor. Although this was a short dynasty, much was accomplished, including the beginning of the Great Wall. Standards were set for weights, measures, and money. Many roads and canals were built, and a single type of writing was used throughout the country. All of these advancements would be used in future dynasties to make China strong. The Han dynasty was established. It established the civil service to create a strong and organized government. Paper and porcelain were also invented during this time, and the Han embraced Confucianism, poetry, and literature. And then 6 dynasties, a period of time where China was not united under a single ruler or leader. And then the Xiu unite China again under one rule. They also expanded the Great Wall and built the Grand Canal. So let's take a little bit closer look at the Shang dynasty. The Shang was the first Chinese dynasty with written records. The Shang ruled from around 1600 BC to 1046 BC. Some historians consider the Shang to be the first Chinese dynasty. Other historians consider it to be the second dynasty, coming along after the legendary Zhou dynasty. The Shang tribe, got distracted. The Shang tribe grew into power around 1600 BC. Legend has it that the Shang were united under the leadership of Cheng Tang. Cheng Tang defeated the evil king Zhai of the Zhou to begin the Shang dynasty. The Shang ruled around an area around the Yellow River Valley for around 500 years. They had many rulers and capital cities during that time. The government became corrupt under the rule of King Di Xin. He was overthrown by Wu of Zhou, and the Zhou dynasty was founded. You can tell I do not speak fluent Chinese. The Shang dynasty. How do we know about the Shang? Much of what we know about the Shang comes from oracle bones. These were bones that the Shang used to try and determine the future. Religious men would write a question on one side of the bone and then burn the bone until it cracked. They would then interpret the cracks for the answers and write the answers on the other side of the bone. Historians are able to decipher much of the history of the Shang through these questions and answers. Thousands of oracle bones have been found by archaeologists. Other information about the Shang comes from ancient Chinese historians such as Sima Qian from the Han dynasty. Some short inscriptions are also found on bronze religious items of the Shang. Writing. The Shang were the first Chinese dynasty to invent writing and have a recorded history. This ancient writing is fairly similar to modern Chinese script. Writing enabled the Shang to have a fairly organized society and government. The government of the Shang dynasty was fairly advanced. They had many levels of leaders, starting with the king. Most of the high-level officials were closely related to the king. Warlords often ruled areas of land, but owed allegiance to the king and would provide soldiers during times of war. The government collected taxes from the people and tributes from surrounding allies. And then bronze. The Shang also developed bronze technology. They did not make normal tools out of bronze, but used bronze for religious items and weapons. Bronze weapons, such as spears, gave the Shang an advantage in war against their enemies. The Shang also used horse-drawn chariots in battle, giving them further advantage. Interesting facts about the Shang dynasty. It's sometimes referred to as the Yin dynasty. One of the most famous kings of the Shang was Wu Jing, who ruled for 58 years. The last capital of Shang was the city of Yinzhou. And then archaeologists have discovered many oracle bones at Yinzhou. Most of the oracle bones discovered have been the shoulder blades of oxen or turtle shells. Questions on oracle bones included things like, will we win the war? Should we go hunting tomorrow? And will the baby be a son? The Shang worship their dead ancestors, as well as a supreme being called Shangdi. And now we come to your student guide. So go ahead and turn back to pages 118 to 121. And this will look familiar to you. You filled in information about Sumer and Egypt. You have not yet filled in information about the Indus Valley or China. So please go ahead and take some time. You can pause this video and you can fill in the information about the Indus Valley, which we just finished studying, and then about China. And so we have a page here on geography and economy. You can pause to fill that in. And then we have religion and philosophy. Again, you can pause the video to fill this in. And then we have knowledge and arts and technology. And we have government and law. Society and history. And there we come to the end of the chart. So again, please make sure that you do complete your reading pages. I'm sorry, I have up here none for today's lesson. That's actually incorrect. It was pages 130. Let me go back here. It was pages, sorry about that, 137 to 139. So I'll make sure that is corrected when I post this PDF for your actual lesson. Let me apologize for that. All right, in our vocabulary words, primary source are the raw materials of history, original documents and objects that were created at the time under study. This should be the raw. Lots of typos in this one. I apologize. Ancestor is a person, typically one or more, remote than a grandparent, from whom one is descended. Cast means in relation to bronze, and bronze is considered cast when it's shaped in a mold. So cast could mean many things, but in relation to bronze, it's considered cast when it's shaped into a mold. And then oracle is a group of inscribed animal bones and shells discovered in China and used originally in divination by the ancient Chinese, especially during the Shang Dynasty. And here we come to our quote section. Nothing succeeds like one's own successor, and that's stated by Clarence H. Hinks. Thank you so much for joining me today. I do apologize for those little typos. I will make sure those are corrected for the PDF that is posted. Motivation is what gets you started. Habit is what keeps you going. Have an amazing day.